gentlemen, gender nonconforming and trans deities, welcome to the Hoodoisie! We are Chicago's bi-weekly underground live and live stream news show that gives Black optic and radical perspectives on culture and politics. I'm your host, Ricardo Gamboa, or Ricardo Gamboa. Give it up for me. Woo! The Hoodoisie is back. We were on break, enjoying summer like the rest of Chicago. Chicago summers are the shit, right? Turning up in like best friends' backyards, at barbecues, biking down the lakefront with your boyfriend or girlfriend or gender nonconforming or trans deity friend. Summer is the best way to tell if gentrification, right? That's how I measure gentrification, how it's progressing in Chicago, is through summers. Because I just look around and see if I see a lot more white people around than I did the summer before, right? And it's also, it's also getting really bad when you start seeing them in places that you never did when you were growing up, like the Taste of Chicago. And you're like, Chad, put down that fucking turkey leg and go back to Michigan. No, I'm just kidding. Chicago's a place for all of us until it's not. And summer is when Black and brown Chicagoans just run out of their homes and just start pulling the trigger on their shortage of values. Yep, because that's right. Isn't that what Ram said last week? That the violence in Chicago's communities can be attributed to a shortage of values in those communities. I think we all know that Mayor's 16 shots and a cover-up has no business talking to any of us about fucking values. But he is a small man and has 9 fingers, so he is an authority on shortages. Has anyone ever seen him in real life? He's actually like really tiny. He could wear my foreskin as a turtleneck. But then he would just be Mitch McConnell. All right, our show tonight is about autonomy. So I want to talk about an autonomous zone that is currently being created on Chicago's South Side. Since June, Black Lives Matter, Stop Chicago, and Let Us Breathe Collective have been occupying an empty lot in Woodlawn to create what they call a healing village. The village was created as a continuation of the mental health movement that began when Rahm Emanuel closed half of the city's public mental health clinics. So far, the village has featured free yoga and gardening classes and free therapy sessions. It also serves as a healing space for protesters after the police shooting of Harith Augustus in South Shore. The purpose of the occupation is to redirect conversations around mental health from individual issues to social ills and to imagine new possibilities for community healing. Unsurprisingly, the city is not down for this cause. Alderman Willie Cochran served the village with an eviction notice at the beginning of the month. A few days later, Chicago would have one of its most violent weekends of the year. The city responded to that violence with its own solution: increased police in the impacted areas and a policy of breaking up any non-permitted gathering of over 10 people. Let's talk about it.
So I'm working on a project about North Lawndale, and it has the highest concentration of empty lots in the city. And the city requires that empty lots are fenced in, but they don't do that for every empty lot. But if you buy a lot from the city, they require you to fence it in. So you also have to pay for fencing and like all of these things. And so I just feel like Willie Cochran trying to shut down this space that's like very beautiful for community is a really like hideous way of like shitting on people who are trying to make something really great for the community with the resources that they have. And I think that people should continue to take over lots without telling the aldermen.
So these ideas, I think, around even within our own communities about what it means to have radical healing aren't even acceptable, which is the other reason that it becomes sometimes difficult to occupy these spaces. It's connected to everything that we're seeing when like white people call on like black bodies or brown bodies just living, and you're just gonna call the cops on them because you feel uncomfortable. We're talking about like physical body behavior politics that people are imposing, and they call the cops, and we know that the cops have always been used to protect a certain set of people. And I think that that's a big part of what's going on, is that there's this body politics of no, like that's not where we want your bodies in public. That's not how we want your bodies to be in public.
I was thinking when I was coming there, there's probably more dog parks in Wicker Park than there are children's parks in Inglewood and in Austin, right? Racialized capitalism is it's in the fabric of the city of Chicago. So when you hear the numbers, like they close how many mental health facilities, they close 50 schools, we spend $95 million on bike lanes, right, in the city of Chicago. We have capital. We invest very horridly. So this is people taking, like black folks taking their own agency into establishing their own alternative to a system that they divested from, right? And you're criminalizing that behavior. So in my mind, it gets to the point where it's like we are criminalizing survivability.
And so everyone, this empty seat right here is for anyone in the audience to come on up and participate in the conversation at any time you want.
But also, fuck Willie Cochran.
Yeah, that too. Big message.
I'm fucked up.
Because this is the fuck shit that he does. Like, last year, and his ward is part Washington Park, part back in the yards. And so last year, Asada's daughters, like, they built like a community garden, and it took them like a year to do. Willie Cochran said, fuck that, we're gonna uproot this land because we sold this land to the University of Chicago. That's the type of like person like Willie Cochran is.
Puerto Rico school closures and charter expansion. On Wednesday, public school teachers in Puerto Rico held a day-long strike to protest the closure of over 250 schools this year. The teachers are also protesting the government's plan to open up charters in place of the closed public schools.
One of the things that pisses me off when I read this is thinking about that recently I read an article from the Sun-Times about how enrollment in some of our public schools is as low as 12 to 15 students per classroom. And it's too low, is what this article, based on what principals and other administrative people are being told, it's too low of a classroom number to stay alive or to stay open when there's like billions of articles, like literally small classrooms will always, 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 always yield success.
And part of this, though, is kind of was talking about Puerto Rico, right? And what does the privatization of this mean on that island? I think it's really important to return that conversation because what we're seeing is the imperial logics being played out, right, within that space. And, you know, it is exactly what everyone said was going to happen, right? That after it's going to be a way to exploit crisis, right, and disaster capitalism kind of swooping in and refashioning this island in a way that is even more current and more appealing to a neoliberal gaze. And I don't mean neoliberal gaze like homosexuals. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Hi, babe. Put your hands together for Soul Patches.
You left me numb and now you're old. Just a story to be told. All for one, you're on your own. Thankful we were in this space. Now it's time to leave this plane. What a queering way to live. I don't wanna lose when you're in control. I don't wanna lose when I'm on my own. My own, my own, my own. I would like to hear your song. I would like to hear your song. I don't wanna lose when you're on my own, my own, my own. I don't wanna lose when I'm on my own, my own, my own. All for all all for old being, all for being in your own. Simply, or we were in this space. Feel it's time to leave this plane. What a queering way to live.
I saw you last night. Many occupants are never found in the basement.
How y'all feeling? I want to thank my partner Chasky for helping me produce this project that I'm premiering very soon. Yeah. Woo! Just be like,
Occupants are never found. I from the screen. Occupants are never found. I saw you last night. Occupants are never found. The brass rail. Occupants are never found. Are never found. Occupants are never found. Many canoes overturned. Music, Singapore sleep. Music, Singapore sleep. In the basement. In the basement of the brass.
black seeds they were trying to grow. Took me there to the corner store. I made a living off of dying young. Held me closer and said, don't you run. Citing a conversation inside an algorithm. Ashes turn to gold, but there's no way we can hear that I'm lost in my telescope. Sacred souls all around the world. Paper gods got ponds of gold. Blackberries they were trying to grow. Low life in the hand of hope. Sacred souls all around the world. Paper gods got ponds of gold. Blackberries they were trying to grow. Low life in a hand of hope. Took me there to the corner store. I made a living off of dying young. Held me closer and said, don't you run. Citing a conversation inside an algorithm. Ashes turn to gold, but there's no way we can hear that I'm lost in my telescope.
Chris Rudd is a very normatively handsome, if you're into that, community organizer, youth worker, and now the founder and chief activator of Shy by Design, a human-centered design firm dedicated to empowering communities to navigate and develop their own solutions. Formerly, he was the director of the Juvenile Justice Council at Mikvah Challenge, and he was a Civic Innovation Fellow at the Stanford Institute of Design. Let's give it up for Chris Rudd, giving us the breakdown on technology and liberation. Give us a working definition of what human design is.
I get this 1,000 times a day and still don't know how to do it.
They didn't teach you that at the Stanford Institute of Design, Chris?
No.
Okay.
They don't teach that part. If you know, you know. I just say, so design thinking is a mix of a lot of the different design fields. So people are very familiar with architecture to graphic design to fashion design. Human-centered design, design thinking takes aspects from each of those, packages it up. Basically, a lot of people follow this methodology but then really focusing on people. The way I think about it is, how do you put people at the center of everything you create? So I did youth work in Chicago, so fast forwarding from all the other stuff, with the Juvenile Justice Council, worked with some amazing young people who looked at how do you reform this racist juvenile justice system in Chicago. One of the things they uncovered were that tons of young people, particularly black and brown, like 98% black and brown, get these crazy rap sheets that fuck up their lives. And so there's a process to erase these things, but most young people don't have access to it. How do we then help them get access to that? So they said, well, we can make an app to do that. I was like, all right, let's do it. Anyway, so then Stanford found out about it. They started this thing called
Wow.
Yup.
Most excited part of
16.
Wow. What an institutional name dropper we have here.
You asked for the journey. And so they were starting this thing called Civic Innovation. They didn't know what the hell it was. They said, it sounds like that's what you're doing. Why don't you come out here and learn this process and see if you can use it to make something.
I mean, so you brought up Stanford, right? I mean, like, what is you? I think so much of what we talk about is.
I brought it up.
Well, because I you know, I mean, this isn't a question on the interview, but it's one of the questions that I'm thinking about now, right? How kind of activists are negotiating being in spaces that have been, you know, largely kind of exclusive towards towards power. Like the university, like is a catalog of power. Right?
Stanford's one of the worst. When I was out there, I just had to be me, which meant getting involved in San Francisco. I purposely moved to East Palo Alto, which is the closest representation to Chicago in the Bay. It's mainly Black, Latino, and Pacific Asian Islander. November, it was Thanksgiving 2015, and that's when they released the tape of Laquan getting murdered by Jason Van Dyke. To shoot a young Black child in the back 16 times just fucking is enraging. And then when I went back to the Bay, not even a week later, December, I want to say 2nd or 4th, they murdered Mario Woods on 3rd Street in the Bayview. And they shot him 25 times. And the video is almost like they took Laquan and put him in fucking San Francisco and murdered him the exact same way. And I'm happy to get the fellowship, but that's not what I'm here for, right? Like we can get all the accolades or whatever, but it means nothing if we're not fighting for the world that we all deserve. And so fuck Stanford in a lot of ways. I will still use that email address because it gets me into a lot of places that I can't get into.
So in your work, Shy by Design, you specialize in something called community-empowered design. Don't look at my question.
I really wasn't. I just looked down.
Are you an Aries?
Cancer.
Oh shit. They're like the Virgos of the water sign.
I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means, but.
That's astrological design.
Cool.
But so you specialize in something called community-empowered design. Can you explain to us what that means?
Yeah, so the way I've seen design working around all the places I've been is that somebody rich will say, there's a problem somewhere, and we've now heard about design thinking. We should hire a design firm to go over there, and normally the place where they see something bad is in a Black or brown neighborhood. And so they hire a design firm to go in there and fix that thing. Said design firm is normally white dudes and like maybe one Asian woman. And they'll go, the best that I've seen is like, they'll go down to that community, and the first step of design is to build empathy, understand your user. Mm-hmm. And so they'll spend some time and like really get to understand Ricardo and everything about you. And then they will go back to said design firm, normally not in that community, and create a solution. I think that's fucked up. So thinking about this like imperial state, right? Like, again, if the field is mainly white dudes, then we're just recreating the same imperial colonial construct that we have right now and it's not no fault of their own in the sense that they've had the experience that they've had because that's the world we live in, but they can't see anything beyond that. Same way I can't see beyond the experiences that I've had, right? Like, if you ask me to design for women, that's ridiculous because I don't understand what that truly means, right? I can understand that much, maybe. I closed it. And so the process that I've come to term as community empowerment is that our job as designers is not to create the solution, it's that the solution already exists in the communities in which we're supposed to be trying to figure it out. But there are limits, right? Like, we will create the same solution. Like, if you go to young people, I work with young people for a long time, and talk about discipline, they're like, yo, fucking suspend them. Right. Or like, whoop that ass, right? The whole period. Right. Kick them out. Why you letting them talk, right? And so, you know, we start to recreate the same things that we know. I think design has tools to help us get beyond that. And so if we start with communities that have creative solutions all the time, right? Especially poor folk. Anyone ever had like toast and honey as dessert? Fucking brilliant. That was somebody poor who didn't have a fucking whatever, you know what I'm saying? So the idea is that they already have the solution. How do we take design to take it to the next level? How do we think outside of the systems that we already exist in?
How do you see like the kind of design work that you do applying to the liberation like movement space?
I don't. Honestly, right? If we're talking about, to me, liberation means freedom. That's not what we're designing. We're designing new ways to interact under the same overarching framework, which is capitalism. Right? So liberatory work will never be done at IIT, at Stanford, or any of these institutions. Liberatory work will always be done in other spaces. Right?
Yeah, let's give a round of applause for Chris Rowe. We've arrived at our featured guest this evening. Dr. Hakim Abuti is a poet, essayist, activist, educator, and the founder of the Chicago-based Third World Press, which is the largest Black-owned independent press in the United States. In the 1960s and 70s, he was a core activator in the Black arts movement and one of the co-founders of the Organization of Black American Culture. He has written and published over 30 books of poetry and political prose, and he has devoted his career to the establishment of distinct Black aesthetics and independent Black institutions. Madhubuti is also a co-founder of the Institute for Positive Education and the Betty Shabazz International Charter School. Let's give it up for our featured guest this evening, Dr. Haki Madhubuti.
I grew up on the west side of Chicago around Pimps and Hoes slamming Cadillac doors. My mother was in the sex trade. Mm-hmm. She was dead at 35 years old. And I've been on my own since I was 16. And what saved my life was art. Ended up in the military at 18 years old because I was basically on my own, didn't have anything. And the military at that time, as it is today, was a poor boy's answer to unemployment. And I was on the bus going to basic training at Fort Leonard, Missouri, the southern base. And I was reading Paul Robeson's Here I Stand. And Paul Robeson, as you know, was one of our first revolutionaries, and in fact, a student of W.B. Du Bois. When I got off the bus at Fort Leonard, Missouri, I had Paul Robeson's book in my hand, and his big, serious black face was on the cover of the book. And the drill sergeant saw, because this was the time of HUAC, House on Un-American Activities. And he saw Paul Robeson's face. He snatched the book out of my hand. There were about 3 black men. They separated us, and the rest were young white draftees from the South. He separated us, and he snatched the book out of my hand. He said, all you women up against the bus. Now, there are not any women there, it's just men. But the whole sexism thing was how you begin to break you down and make you into what they want you to be. So we jumped up against the bus, and he held my book over his head, and he commenced to tear the pages out the book and gave a page to each of the recruits and said, use it for toilet paper. So at 18, I said, what am I doing here? I'm there because I'm poor, I'm black, I'm by myself, I don't have a mother, I don't have a father, and what else am I going to do? But I learned something that morning. I learned the power of ideas, that ideas and the creators of ideas and the carriers of ideas run the world, and everybody else run after them, all right? I ended up in a base right here in Fort Sheridan here in Illinois, and by that time I had taken reading courses and so forth. I was reading close to a book a day, and each book I read, I wrote a 250-word essay on the book. And by the time I came out of the military in 2 years and 10 months, I read everything, studied everything that black people had produced, number one, in terms of book form, and everything that white people and other people had written about black people. The people who essentially mentored me are El Hajj Malik al-Shabazz, Malcolm X, Margaret and Charlie Burroughs, who were co-founders of the DuSable Museum on the south side of Chicago. Yeah. I'm talking about the people that mentored me. The next person was, and you all know her, Gwendolyn Brooks. Gwendolyn Brooks, I found Gwendolyn Brooks in Woodlawn teaching the Blackstone Rangers creative writing, all right? So she became my cultural mother for over 33 years. Back in 1969, 1970, we had 2 storefronts, one for Third World Press and the other for the Institute of Positive Education. There was a Catholic school right across the street from us. There was a park, Grand Crossing Park right down there, where we used to exercise all the time, staying in shape, getting ready for the revolution. And so what happened, we would run past this Catholic school all the time, but come back, and we would offer free courses and after-school tutorial for the neighborhood young people. The Catholic school that we used to run past was vacant. I went to the archdiocese, talked to the people in the archdiocese after the clown got, mispronounced my name and everything, saying, can we buy this property? He said, no. We already, somebody's going to buy it. Well, I knew he was lying, all right? So I came back out south. I called my Catholic friends out south, said, who makes the decision on the south side of Chicago? And it was a man by the name of Winton Gregory, Bishop Winton Gregory, who is black. What happened was the guy who was so disrespectful called me after he got the letter from Cardinal Bernardine saying, I don't know what you did, but you're on the list, bring me $50,000. We don't have $50,000. Well, what we had and what we have today, my wife and I, we were living in the South Shore at the time. We took out a second mortgage on our home, got $40,000 there. We got another $10,000 from the board that worked with the Institute of Positive Education and Third World Press. And so we took in $50,000. Now, Third World Press was founded in 1967 in my basement apartment about the size of this podium up here that I share with other unwanted animals, okay? I found the Third World Press with $400 in a mimeograph machine. Black Lives Matter came into existence because we struggled around the same issues in the 1960s and 70s, and there's been no quantitative changes for the great majority of people.
Well, so I think that's one of the things that I'm interested in, right? Because the Betty Shabazz International Charter School, Third World Press, the Institute for Positive Education, right? Like you've kind of been dedicated to creating autonomous institutions that are kind of committed towards the sovereignty and self-determination of black people.
Right. The first question I ask young people, and people who are not so young, who come to work with us, do you love black people? Now, the point of all this is we need independent black, independent brown institutions. That means that we have to build these institutional structures ourselves. Yeah, we are starting someplace like this, but we got to move toward ownership. Ownership. Ownership of where you live, ownership of where you work, ownership of where you buy, ownership of where you play. You got to own this stuff.
Let's give it up for Dr. Hakim Abuti. So often the discussion around technology is how it enhances, expands, or extends our abilities. Surveillance cameras are an extension of our eyes, tanks an extension of our fists. However, in those examples and in so many more, from rockets to our iPhones, the abilities that are being enhanced or expanded are not just those of our human form, but of the state, and its ability to maintain a monopoly on the limits of our agency or administer violence against us. But I wonder if for us marginalized people, if we can understand technology as something else than just the expansion of our capabilities. Perhaps for us, technology is how we can reconcile and understand more deeply our abilities in our world that is always trying to degrade, diminish, and rob our individual and collective capacity and worth. I want us to think about the technologies within us, like our heart. I want us to think of it not as an anatomical technology that pumps blood and keeps us alive, but as a spiritual technology that can remind us of our individual and collective effect and potential when we follow its mandates for radical compassion and freedom and our autonomy. Let's leave tonight and innovate with that as we dream up new worlds for us to live. And without further ado, the one, the only, Soul Patches.
To be here just like everybody else. See, their problem is they don't want you to know about me. Because first of all, I get too many dicks hard. Simple as that. I love myself for what I am and who I am. I'm beautiful.
Learned a lot from the darkness. Broken hearts ain't made rich. Mama told me that I had to be patient. My grandpa just became a patient. Cancer grew, it took his liver. Drowned my thought in all that liquor. Thank these gods I'm still that nigga. Waves don't change, it only gets thicker. Run through my blood, live through my hood. Burn all my blunts, I ate some tabs. Rival Maple Thorpe, capturing and mixing all my pain in this one. Had a lover die before, had a lover punch my face. 16 shots, my city always covers up when Black Thought is around. I'm capturing and mixing all my pain in this one. Had a lover die before, had a lover punch my face. Waves don't change, but it's a hill and 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 it's a hill and. Come feel this heart, I'll tell you stories. I came from Shacktown, was a faggot, I'm still a faggot. See, it's a habit, can't live without it. SX in me, Octavia lead me. My Audrey knows me, that kings don't scare me. Mark my Luthers, I hail from futures. Lost in Reagan, I'm mistaken when the whole world is not awakened. Remember when I told Chance I got the best chance? Before happy sloppy fag offending, it's pretending. Cause these days I don't even fuck with money. Cause these days I don't even love my heroes. Enabling my friends to relapse on heroin. Cause we need better men, but y'all won't settle in. Quit so distant, our bodies keep howling. Our bodies keep shouting. We're supposed to be related. We're supposed to be related. We're supposed to be related. Can y'all make some noise for yourselves? Thank you.